Welcome everybody to Wellbeing Mastery Show. I have created this show to help you step onto the path of reclaiming your true health and well-being, no matter where you are at right now. And I have invited outstanding experts, mentors, teachers, and healers to help you connect with that deep healing power of your own body and take back your health and your life. So let's go, because we have a very honorable guest today who has just an incredible wealth of information on your health. We're going to talk about toxins and how to get rid of them. We're going to talk about nutrition, your gut health, many different things. So brace yourself. This is going to be a beautiful ride. So let me introduce you to Dr. Wendie Trubow. She's an MD and MBA. She's an integrative medicine doctor. And Dr. Wendie is passionate about helping women optimize their health and lives as a functional medicine gynecologist. Through her struggles with mold and metal toxicity, celiac disease, and other health issues, Dr. Trubow has developed a deep sense of compassion and expertise for what her patients are facing. She's the co-author of Dirty Girl, Ditch the Toxins, Look Great, and Feel Freaking Amazing. So I cannot wait to invite our esteemed guest today. Welcome, Dr. Wendie. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Monica. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. So, I would love to start with your own story because it's very significant. And tell us, how did you get to what you're doing right now, from being a traditional doctor, traditional MD, to helping women with integrative medicine?
Sure. My story has two peaks. So the first one is the one that got me into functional medicine. I was unhappily sort of getting through my days. I was very sick. I didn't know that I was very sick. I just knew that I felt really terrible.
Yeah.
And my husband was working for a man who was mentoring him, and he said, before our insurance changes, why don't you go see him as a consult? So I did. So he was a functional medicine doctor, and he's the one who really uncovered that I had food sensitivities and celiac disease and nutritional deficiencies. And so that was sort of the thing. Even though my husband was sort of getting involved with functional medicine, it hadn't gotten past my radar until I experienced it myself. And then I went, that's really cool. I didn't quite map on that I would be able to do it until he opened up my husband opened a functional medicine center, and I started sending his patients to him for people I couldn't get better, people who I was like, something's going on and I don't know what it is. I don't have the tools in my conventional practice to deal with it. So I would send him patients and then he would get them better. And that irked me. Not that they got better, but that I couldn't do it. And so it really opened my eyes to it. This is where I'm sort of the path I'm meant to walk down, because I'm really into what's the root cause and how do we fix the problem, not just what's the medication for your symptom, but what's going on so we can fix it. I'm really into that. And that resonated perfectly because that's all about what functional medicine does.
Yes, beautiful. Getting into the root. And,
Yeah.
you talk about, you were quite an example of health. You were eating well, doing everything right, and then
Yep.
things happened.
Yeah, so that's part two. So that diagnosis of celiac sent me on this path to really work on my health and be healthy. I worked on celiac, I eliminated gluten, I worked on candida, I got rid of alcohol, I worked out, and then I hit perimenopause. And perimenopause was cruel and unusual punishment for me. And I just chalked it up to perimenopause. I gained like 16 pounds. Actually, I only gained 9 pounds, but now I'm down 16. So it's sort of like, where was I feel like I'm where I was meant to be. So maybe I just was heavier than I meant to before. So I gained weight, I lost my hair, I lost my energy, and I chalked it up to perimenopause.
Yeah.
And what it really was that I had a lead exposure that was so much that my body started to show signs of it. And I actually had 2 lead exposures in a 1-year period, one of which I recognized. That was when my neighbor took his post-war house down that had lead paint. I knew it had lead paint. When he took the house down, I was like, shut the windows, we're going to get a lead exposure. But then I kind of forgot about it. And my hair started to fall out afterwards, but I didn't make the connection. And then in about almost 9 months later, we went to France right after Notre Dame burned. And it was amazing, although very dusty. And we weren't able to go to Notre Dame because it had burned and the construction crews were cleaning up. But right after we came home, that's when I gained all this weight and my hair started falling out like crazy. And I got brain fog and fatigue and a rash on my face. And it took me a few months to figure it out because it's hard to treat yourself, right? So at first I was like, oh, my thyroid must be off, right? Everyone's thyroid is off. So my thyroid must be off. My thyroid was perfect. Then I thought, okay, my hormones are off because I'm perimenopausal.
Yes.
My hormones were perfect. So then I was totally stumped. I did a stool test because in functional medicine, we always go to the gut. My stool test was good, not perfect, but good. So then I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. Sort of flailed around for a month or so. And then I heard this report on NPR that said that when Notre Dame burned down, 500 tons of lead was released into the surrounding air. And the closer you were to Notre Dame, the more exposure you got. And the farther away, obviously, the less you got. And I went, I was there. I was there. And that's when I got sick. I got a lead exposure. So I did the testing and found lead and mercury. And then because I'm innately curious, I also did mycotoxins testing, which is the testing for looking at mold toxins in your body. And then I'm like, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. That's this great expression. So I was like, I'll also look at what are the other toxins and did the environmental toxins. So I had 2 metals. I had lead and mercury.
Wow.
I had 4 strains of mycotoxins, and I had about 9 different environmental toxins like nail polish, gasoline fumes, plastics, styrenes, perchlorate. There was a whole list. And I looked at my husband and I said, I am such a dirty girl.
Right.
And then I went, and that's the book we're writing because like, I was the poster, like I walk the talk, right? I didn't eat sugar and processed carbs. I don't drink alcohol. I exercise. And then I didn't feel well. So I was like the poster child for healthy living and I still felt badly. And it was because of all these toxins.
Yes. And, I really wanted you to bring that story because I think there's a lot of people out there who are, trying everything, doing everything right. And still there is a problem and their health is just not what it should be. And so toxins are a huge part of it. But let's go to part 1 because you talk about celiac. What is the impact of gut health on our overall health, right?
It's like a gimme question. So Monica,
Yeah.
gut. So I sort of referenced, whenever you can't figure it out, go to the gut because the gut runs your body. If you think of your gut like the center of the spoke, and then everything comes off of it. So your energy and your thyroid and your adrenals and your brain function and your bones, all of it, the health for all of those things starts in your gut because your gut is the central processing unit that decides if it's going to take up all the minerals and nutrients or if it's going to let the toxins through by having leaky gut or if it's going to function properly or if you're going to poop because if you don't poop, you don't get rid of your toxins. Your gut determines your health. And if it's out of whack, you're not going to be healthy. It's important. It's critical, actually.
Okay, so if somebody comes into your practice and they saying, well, I don't know what to do. Where do I start? I feel terrible. Everything's just falling apart. Do you go first to the gut?
We do. So we go to 3 places first. And it's so funny because people always say, oh, I heard you on this or that show and I want to do my toxins. I'm like, that's awesome. But we first have to deal with your gut because we can't deal with your gut anything until we dealt with your gut. So when people come in and they don't feel well, what we want to look at are the foundational behaviors. What are the foods you're eating? How are you digesting and uptaking them? What's happening in your gut? Are you sleeping? How are your hormones? How are your minerals and nutrients? Are you a stress ball? How are your relationships, both with yourself and with others? So we really look at everything about your life. Do you love your job? Do you hate your job? We look at everything. And that's the foundational approach. And then I don't know. I like stats, right? So 60 to 80% of people will feel 60% to 80% better. And they'll go, some people will be like, oh, I feel like $1,000,000. And then I go, cool, you're good. You don't have to do anything more, right? You got better. You don't need to worry about the toxins right now. And then people will come in and say, I feel good, but I think I could feel better. And then I say, okay, well, you're doing everything right. We've looked at your adrenals, your gut, your minerals, nutrients, your hormones. Now we get to the toxins. So toxins is sort of the upper level of that pyramid. The base of it is all of the foundational things that keep you healthy. And then we look at your toxins, and I should probably pause, but I'd like to just add, when we're looking at toxins, we're looking at heavy metals, mycotoxins, environmental toxins, pesticides, herbicides, insecticides. It's a huge list. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics, I think. But, a lot of people who are watching this show are struggling with chronic pain. And then there is the issue of inflammation,
Yeah.
right? What does it really mean to have chronic inflammation in our body? And how does it link to the gut?
Yeah, this is such a great question, Monica. So,
Mhm.
so health starts in the gut, and if the gut's out of whack, it's going to increase inflammation. And so that can happen directly because you're eating a food that's inflaming the gut, or indirectly because you have candida and that's inflammatory, or you have a toxin that's aggravating the gut, or you're exposed to something, or you're stressed and your gut's out of whack. There's a lot of reasons that the gut can be out of whack, but anything that causes the gut to be out of whack will trickle into the rest of the system and show up as inflammation. And inflammation, so basically, if you say to me, I have cancer, then I say, you have inflammation gone wrong, right? If you say, I have cardiovascular disease or diabetes or prediabetes or obesity or difficulty losing weight or fatigue or headaches, kind of anything, I'll say to you, well, you have inflammation. Let's figure out what's the source of it. Is it, if you kind of boil it down, you go, is it too much of something bad, a food, a toxin, a lifestyle, or is it too little of something? Too, too little of something doesn't usually cause inflammation per se. It just makes you not feel well, right? So if you don't have enough vitamin D, your mood may be depressed, but it's not intrinsically inflammatory. It's just not pro balance. It's a little weird to think about. Um, so lack of vitamin D, if you have vitamin D, it's anti-inflammatory, but lack of vitamin D just sort of leaves you open. It's like nature abhors a vacuum. So you want to look at what are the things causing that inflammation directly, and it's often a food, a toxin, a yeast, a lifestyle, alcohol, um, microbiome imbalance. So if people have had a lot of bacteria or antibiotics and the bacteria balance is off, all these things cause inflammation, and all of those lead to chronic illness.
So if somebody comes into you again, and so you look at the gut and you're trying to determine, then I guess is it must be really looking at the entire lifestyle of that
Yeah,
person, right? What is
it is.
happening, right? What is happening with my sleep? What is happening
Yeah.
with the hormones? What is happening with my lifestyle and the stress level as well? So, so can you guide us a little bit through that again? Because I think it's so important. Because people get overwhelmed. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
How many toxins are there in our environment? How many issues are there with food? So sometimes, I mean, it's like, where do we even begin to start
Yeah.
with? Like, I'm just not feeling good. I want to know, but there is probably 1,000 different possibilities and potential reasons.
Yeah, I always recommend starting with food because you do it 3 times a day. We eat all the time. So you want to start by looking at what are you eating and what impact is it having on your body. And so often we'll start with some type of elimination diet, and what that means is you eliminate either one food or you eliminate a number of categories of food to see what impact it has on your body. So often, if you eliminate the top allergens and don't eat anything processed, so meaning nothing from a package, you're going to feel a lot better just by starting with that because you've taken away a huge source of friction that the body's experiencing. So, so you start with food, absolutely, because that's what you do every day. And then, a lot of people are busy and stressed and overwhelmed. So the question is, how can you go from where you are, which is however you're eating, to a way of eating that is less processed, more vegetables, less sugar, and more fiber? That's kind of the low hanging way to approach it. Not to go crazy like, oh, I have to cook for 20 hours a day. It's not like that. It's like, what can I do that's sustainable If you don't have time to cook something, you can eat it raw. It's actually got great minerals and nutrients. It's not going to be bad for you. So it's looking at what are ways that you can improve the foods. If you're eating tons of vegetables, great. Let's make sure they're all organic. If you're not eating that many vegetables, let's get some vegetables in that are preferably organic, but at the very least have some minerals and nutrients as opposed to processed, because processed has been sort of devoid of minerals and nutrients.
Yes, I absolutely love that. We can start small, just start making small changes, the most basic things, like what are the processed foods in my diet right now? We'll start eliminating little by little. And I think that really opens the possibility of taking control of what's happening, because we cannot take control of everything, right? It's absolutely impossible. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about food, because there is a lot of choices. And you talk a lot about organic food, and that may not even be enough, right? So I'm curious about that. Because people say, hey, I eat organic all the time. Why am I still not feeling good?
Right. So I always say to people, if you are doing everything right, you eat organic, you don't drink alcohol, you don't eat a lot of sugar, you exercise, you sleep, you're not a stress ball. If you're doing all those things and you don't feel well, then you've got a toxins issue, because those are the issue behind the issue, essentially. So once you've dealt with the low-hanging fruit and the platform and the foundation, that's the next thing to look at.
Okay. So what are the worst offenders when it comes to toxins?
All right, I hope you're all sitting down. So
I am. Guys, sit down.
Right, you're going to brace yourself for that. So there's a lot of categories. So there's 3 buckets it falls into. So the heavy metals is the first category. The ones that we look at mostly are lead and mercury, although cadmium, arsenic, and thallium are the next level down. But lead and mercury are really the nasty ones. They're the ones that lead to osteoporosis, bone loss, hair loss. All of them can do hair loss, difficulty losing weight. All of them can make you fatigued. All of them raise the inflammatory state of the body, can make the gut inflamed and be pro-cancer causing. But and also, I think it's important to put a plug in for dementia. These are all things that can alter the brain function. So metals is one category. Mycotoxins is the next. Those are the toxins that mold puts out when it's in your body. Those are often found in leaky buildings, wet buildings, foods. There's a lot of foods that have a lot of mycotoxins in them. And then wet environments, or if you have a moldy basement, that's typically how you get exposed to mycotoxins. And a lot of times what we'll see with that is difficulty losing weight, reactive airway disease, rashes, skin issues, hair loss. Everything causes hair loss, just for the record, like all across the board. And then the third bucket is environmental toxins and glyphosate, herbicides, pesticides, insecticides. And that's things like plastics, nail polish fumes, beauty products, styrene finishes, VOCs, perchlorate in the water. This is just a huge list. This doesn't even get into really the environmental toxins that are put out by different companies as they're making products. So this is a huge category. And then there's also glyphosate, which is the most commonly used herbicide, and that's Roundup. In fact, I saw my neighbor spraying it on. He has the most beautiful yard, and I saw him spraying it on his. I always thought, oh, he has a beautiful yard because he picks out the weeds. No, he has a beautiful yard because he sprays Roundup on it. But the problem is that disrupts the microbiome, because it was initially developed as an antibiotic, and it's a pro-cancer causing agent. So I was like, oh, I got to wander over there and just sort of let it drop, like, hey, I don't know if you're aware that that's really harmful for you. So the sources of environmental toxins are huge, and that's the third category. And that can cause a range of things, like disruption in the microbiome, like I mentioned, to endocrine disruption, fatigue, difficulty with weight loss. It's a huge list. Hair loss. It's a huge list.
Okay, so if with the entire list that you mentioned, and I know there's many, many, many more, how do we test? Because you can go to a traditional medicine doctor or conventional medicine doctor, and say get your blood test and it's clear. I mean, you don't have
Yeah.
toxins, and still, yeah, there is that mystery thing going on. What do you do?
Yeah, so the only thing you can test in the blood actually is arsenic. That's the only thing that'll show up if you actually have higher levels. But because most of these toxins are very toxic, that's why they're toxins, called toxins, you don't have them floating around your bloodstream. You have them stored in your bones, which is why the lead leads to osteoporosis, your fat, and your organs. So you won't see it in your bloodstream. So the way to test is to do some kind of provoked test that pulls it out. And then normally it's a urine test in order to do a really great. I like urine. I know there are some providers actually who do hair and blood. I'm not a huge fan of either of them because they typically only show the acute exposure. They don't show it just sort of chronically, and those are for metal. So I don't usually do hair or blood analysis. We use urine because it's it's relatively well. Uh, I can't say standardized because you could do the same test over and over and get different results, but it's within a range. It's not like you swing wildly from, oh, I'm negative today and 3 months later I was positive and then a week later I'm negative. It's not like that. It's more just, it's not the holy grail, but it's a good place to
Mhm.
start to understand I have low, moderate, or high levels of toxins.
Okay, right. So you just look at the bigger picture first and
Yeah.
then trying to determine which one is the one that maybe is the biggest offender
Yeah.
in the patient's body.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I would like to switch gears just a little bit because, women are a little different when it comes to toxins. What can you tell us about that? And you mentioned already perimenopause, and
Yeah.
yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah, so it's harder for us to detox. And
Hmm.
that partly may be because we have estrogen that we need to detox from. And
Hmm.
it's also because women don't process alcohol as efficiently as men do. But because we're often around men, we drink as much as men and we can't process it. But alcohol is a toxin. And so that disrupts the liver from doing what it would normally do. So for women, we get sort of double whammied essentially.
Hmm.
And then the other layer of that, or the third layer, is that as women, we use a lot of beauty products. So from what we wash our hair to put on our skin to lotions to nail care, all of that can contain toxins in it. So compared to men, we're getting an additional sort of shot of toxins. Like we
Hmm.
sort of amp it up. We're really good at amping up how much we're exposed.
Hmm. Yeah, and then there's also stress, I think, because a
Yeah.
lot of women are taking on. Can you talk more about the role of stress and how does it all come into this big picture?
Yeah, so when you're stressed, even and it's
Yeah.
so funny, most of us are so used to feeling stress that we don't actually experience it until it gets really
Mhm.
bad.
Yeah.
But even just our normal level of stress is very stressful, and most women will say, "I don't really feel that stressed, it's just my normal." And I'm like, "Your brain might not feel stressed,
Mhm.
but your body is still back in the stone ages experiencing it very differently. We're very primitive." So when you experience stress, what happens is it can be an action, it can be a thought, whatever happens, your adrenals get the message something's wrong. And your adrenals are these little organs, they're like the shape of a walnut, and they're on top of your kidneys in your back. And when something happens to jack them up, they're responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. And they're gonna make you fight, flight, freeze. And they set off a whole chain of events that occurs in your body. So say you're driving your car and you have this thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to get in a car accident.
Yes.
Your adrenals immediately kick in. You get a rush of adrenaline
Mhm.
and you get a rush of cortisol. That cortisol and adrenaline signal to the liver, guys, we have a major issue here. It is not a priority to focus on detox because we need to deal with this like impending disaster. Okay, remember, we're super primitive. It's only on or off. It's not like you can do gradations, but it's not like, oh, this is just a work stress. No, it's all experienced the same way. It shuts down your detox and it sends a message to the gut saying, halt the presses. It is not a priority right now to poop or absorb, because we have a crisis on our hands, folks. So your gut shuts down. So your liver shuts down, your gut shuts down, and your adrenals are pumping out all this cortisol. So now you're all wired up. But you, because your body thinks you're going to be eaten by a lion, but no lion came to eat you. And then the stressor passes, but we're all like, whew, we're all kind of jacked up from that, right? So stress is very bad for detox because it shuts the system down almost like instantaneously, unfortunately.
Yeah. So if somebody comes to you and that's what you see, can you even start detoxing? Can you even start helping your patients until they get to a maybe even more even leveled um, nervous system
Yeah.
that's actually, it's not just in this constant fight and flight? How
Yeah,
can you help with that?
I do say to people, the best
Mm-hmm.
supplements in the world are going to be useless if you abuse yourself and if you're a stress ball. So
Yeah.
it's really important to take care of yourself. So there's a number of different levels. So don't do things that stress your body. That's I know it's never popular to say, but don't drink alcohol.
Mhm.
Don't eat sugar. That's very stressful for the adrenals and the rest of the body. Make sure you get enough. Make sure you get enough rest. So we're sort of programmed to not get enough rest, to be proud of how little sleep we can get by on, but really it's very bad for us. Get enough rest. Typically, people need about 8 hours in bed in order to get enough rest. So prioritize sleep. Limit exposure to things that are emotionally or physically toxic. So sometimes it happens like once a year. I'll say to someone, I can't help you until you quit your job or until you quit your marriage.
Yeah.
And like if you've done everything you can and it's still really toxic emotionally, that is so much more powerful than anything we're going to do. We need to deal with that's the massive problem. And then the other issue is that we're really often very unkind to ourselves.
Mhm.
And even being, you make a mistake, right? You're human. You make a mistake and you go, oh, I'm so stupid. And it doesn't just stop at, oh, I'm so stupid. It's like, how could you have done that? And why do you do that? Remember when you did that 10 years ago and,
Mhm.
berating ourselves for making a mistake. And so I always say to my patients, you can't say things that are unkind about yourself in my office. And I suggest that you practice being kind to yourself, because as a human being, you're going to make mistakes. That's how humans learn, right? Babies don't stop practicing walking because they fall down. Why would we stop practicing life because we make a mistake? So don't let your mistakes be the thing that make you unhealthy emotionally. Look, I am the poster child for non-toxic living and I make mistakes. I buy products and then I was like, I was so proud of the new detergent I bought about a year ago. I was like, it's good for the universe. It's unscented. It comes in these little pods. I used it for 6 months. And then I woke up one day and I went, oh, I never checked that. I actually never checked to see on the environmental working group to see if it was clean. So I type it in. It's not clean. I was like, oops, now I got something to share. Right.
Yeah.
So so there's a couple pathways though. I could have gone down the road of, oh, I am the poster child. How could I have done something like that? How can I be a spokesperson? I mean, no, like humans screw stuff up. And then how kind you can be to yourself is really a measure of how kind and how much detox and how kind you can be in the world. So the
Yeah.
first rule is like, how can you spin this so you're nice to yourself? Yes, you screwed up. If nobody died, get over it. Let it go. Really, like you weren't a bad person and you're not a bad person. You're doing your best. And we're all busy. So you make mistakes.
Beautiful. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We talk a lot about mindset and how
Yeah.
mindset is really the basic foundation for
Mhm.
actually being able to heal ourselves and get healthy, because the stress level and it's just not worth it. And
No.
and you're right. I mean, we're programmed in a way that's not very helpful for us, especially with this whole idea. It's like, okay, the more I work, the less I sleep, the more of a hero I am. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that is really leading us in a very downward spiral. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you mentioning that. And I'd love to talk about the Dirty Girl because I see the cover up behind you. Can you tell us how did it come about, and what do you talk about in your book? How can it help us, our viewers?
Definitely. So we wrote the book because I but even before figuring out I had all these toxins, I was so focused on health, and I ate organic, and I was on a candida control protocol. So I didn't eat any processed food or sugar. I didn't eat alcohol. I get enough rest. I exercise. I'm like doing everything right. Right. And then I gain all this weight, and I have this rash on my face. I wanted to rip my face off, Monica. It was so itchy. And my hair was falling out. And I was like, what's going on here, folks? And I figured out I had all these toxins. And I said to my husband, first off, I said to him, I am such a dirty girl. And then I said, oh, well, that's the book we got to write.
Yeah.
And then I said to him, we need to get the word out, because I have spent the last 16 years doing all those things, doing everything right. Right.
Mhm.
And yet, when I really got down to it, I was full of toxins. And so if I'm doing all these things to be healthy and I'm not healthy, what's everyone else got who may not be as far along on their food and alcohol and self-discovery and all that? Where is everyone else? And how do we get the word out? So we wrote the book, one, to shed light on the issue, so you even understand, oh, this is a problem. And then two, what do you do about it? So it's a roadmap for how do you systematically clean up your health, clean
Mhm.
up your life, clean up your world, clean up your brain, clean everything up, so
Mhm.
that,
Wow.
and here's the thing. The conversation is, why would we do this? What difference does it make, right?
Yes. Hmm.
So what we say is, you're meant to be vital, vibrant, healthy, alive, able to participate in and interested in intimacy until you're at least 100. And so, in
Hmm.
order to do that, you're going to have to put the work in to start peeling off the things that make you sick. Because otherwise, you're going to go the opposite path, and you're just going to keep declining every decade. And we reject that idea that you're meant to decline every decade. We totally reject it. You're meant to improve, but
Hmm.
you got to do the work to take care of yourself and take off the things that make you sick.
Yeah, so it's just so important because so many people come in, and say, "Hey, the doctor said I'm just getting old. That's why it's happening."
Yes.
And I'm just getting old. I mean, yeah, maybe I'm supposed to be in pain. Maybe I'm supposed to feel like I have no energy. I mean, you talk a lot about it. Tell us more about those concepts that are still out there, so
Yeah. Well,
harmful.
I totally reject the idea that you're meant to get
Yeah.
worse as you age. I just flatly reject that. And I say that to my patients, like, I reject the idea.
Mhm.
And it's hard. It's an easy pitfall to fall into, Monica. Like, when I
Mhm.
hit the skids with my toxins exposures, I chalked it up to menopause. I was like, well, I'm 48, I'm perimenopausal, so this is kind of what happens. Your body changes, you
Mhm.
gain weight, your
Mhm.
skin changes, your hair changes. And then when I did all my hormones testing and my adrenals and my gut and everything was great, I was like, oh, I fell in the trap, right? I fell in the pit. So you have to keep rejecting that idea that, oh, we're just going to fail and get decrepit and die in our beds, devoid of mind and body. No, no. Eventually the system will break down, but not for many, many years. We
Mhm.
are, all these chronic diseases that we struggle and suffer with, they're not inevitable. They are fixable and avoidable.
Beautiful, right? So thinking about I can actually live a full life full of energy, vitality until I drop dead instead of dying for 20 years, which I feel
Yes.
like this is what we're being programmed to do. And you mentioned menopause. I would love to go back to that because that's another thing, right? A lot of women say, well,
Yeah.
it is because, and you've been there, yeah, right? You know that it's because of menopause approaching, or maybe because I'm menopausal. And so, can you give us a little more insight on that?
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into menopause and the transition into it. So it's huge. But
Mhm.
what's really important to remember is that when women transition from being women who conceive, so that's one phase of life, into women who are not of conception age, the adrenals pick up a lot of the work in your hormone balance. So when your ovaries are doing it, that's a very high level. That's designed to generate an egg, fertilize the egg, maintain a pregnancy. But when you're menopausal, you don't need to do that. So the levels are much lower and your adrenals do the work. However, if you're busy and you're stressed and you drink alcohol and you don't sleep and you're anxious and your gut's a mess, when you hit the age at which you start to transition into menopause, your adrenals can't pick up the slack because they're busy and they're very overwhelmed with making sure that you get through your days and have the energy to do it, because they're our fight, flight, or freeze organ. So it's really, things definitely shift around as you're going through menopause. You can have high hormones, you can have low hormones, it's inconsistent, but the adrenals should keep you level. And if you're not level, it's because the adrenals are out of whack, and you really want to sort of care and coddle and support the adrenals in doing what they need to, so that you're ace without symptoms of menopause. And when
Yes,
I,
it is possible.
yeah, it's definitely possible.
Yes. Beautiful.
Definitely.
I love your approach. Like cuddle and just put love into your body. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a constant struggle and trying. And yeah, sometimes we have to fight for things, but there's a beautiful balance of it too that you bring it up. So, Dr. Wendie, you have a special gift for our viewers. Is that true?
I do.
Okay,
I
tell us.
I know that it can be difficult to lead your life and eliminate toxins and figure out like what's the best product. So as I was going through this journey, we collected all of the things and now we put it into a guide. So it's a non-toxic guide for healthy living. It can stand alone. It can be in companion to the book. And it's really to help you start to level up. And just before I tell you the link, I'll tell you in a second, I really recommend, don't throw everything out all at once. I recommend that as you run out of something, that's a perfect time to level up. So don't throw your whole makeup counter out. No, just when you run out of your mascara, that's a good time. Or when you're out of shampoo or you need more detergent, those are the times to buy something that's the cleaner level. And so the guide is at 5journeys.com/promo, PROMO. And the 5 in 5 journeys is spelled out. And
Beautiful. Yes.
so, yeah.
We are going to link this gift for everybody. So it's going to be nice and simple and easy, and you can connect with Dr. Wendie. And so is there anything that maybe I didn't ask you today and you would like to bring up?
Yeah, I think it can feel a little bit overwhelming when you're starting this journey. And so you always want to start with your food, your sleep, food and sleep. Start with those. Then add in stress reduction and exercise, or change it up. If you're already exercising, pick one thing and have a win. You don't have to do it. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you're not going to be perfect. You're never going to be perfect, right? Because that's the meaning of evolution. You're in the game. So today is a great day to get in that game. Get a buddy, don't wait, and get started.
Beautiful. Yes. And we can take one step at a time
Yes.
without trying to throw everything out of our life today, because that can be even more of a stressful
Yeah.
event than anything. So let's not put more stress into actually cleaning our lives up. And I love that you're offering this gift to everybody, because, it's going to be a step-by-step guide.
Yeah,
That
it
will help
really
you,
is.
yes, help you not get into the overwhelm, because
Yeah.
toxins can be dealt with. Like Dr. Wendie is just demonstrating with just being here, full of energy. So that's quite amazing.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much for sharing all of this. I know there's a lot, and I encourage everybody to get the gift, connect with Dr. Wendie, look at her website. We're going to be linking everything to the video here and in the show. Check out her book. She's really an encyclopedia for you to know how to start taking care of yourself, on a deeper level, on many different aspects, and how to detoxify your life and your body. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I want to encourage you to come back and see all our interviews, because we have a beautiful array of amazing experts who are bringing all those different pieces of the puzzle together to help you start creating that life of health and vitality and outstanding energy. So I appreciate everybody. I appreciate your presence here today, Dr. Trubow. And well, we'll be talking again.
We will. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Monica.
Bye.